Nubyjas Wilborn, he writes for the AL.com, again, has a great story today on the inside the end of Bryan Harsin's Auburn tenure, and he joins us now on 365 Sports. Thanks for your time. Yeah, this was, no matter all of what you've written, and it's great, it's very much insightful. We'll get into a lot of that. What was, no matter what he did, unless he ran the table or they were 7-1 right now, was he a dead man walking?
You know, it's difficult to say because it's more than just on-field wins that were issues. You know, a lot of it was recruiting. I mean, you look at recruiting classes right now. You look at last year's recruiting class. So it's a combination of a lot of different issues. I would say his best bet would have been don't get beat by 29 against Penn State. Don't give up a 17-point lead against LSU. And don't get your doors blown off against UGA. Oh, and then maybe sign a 5-star or two. Then maybe we're in a different situation.
Nubyjas, what could he have done to make this season, outside of winning more games, seem like it's just a step in the process? Was it already too far gone when the season started?
Well, I mean, it's tough, right? Because once the inquiry happened in February, and again, listen, schools do inquiries all the time in programs. We all know this, okay? Because things happen. But this just got so public. And when it got so public, it really kneecapped Bryan Harsin in a lot of different ways. And it created a level of distrust that was very difficult for him to come back from. You know, he got a lot of complaints for not being as visible. But also, you got to remember, he got hired right during the pandemic. Is that was still raging? Or, excuse me, during the quarantine portion of the pandemic, because, you know, pandemic still kind of happening. But anyway, you know, during the quarantine portion, so a lot of that was he couldn't go out. He couldn't do things. Then when he could, by then it was already a little bit too late for some people. But once the February inquiry happened, it created a really dangerous split where people just refused to come around on him. And even though he was doing the things, they felt as though it was a little bit too late. And this goes back to February all the way up till now. So it became one of those things like, hey, we don't like you. We decided we don't like you. And anything we do reminds us why we don't like you.
Where does the quarterback situation with Nick's doing what he's doing now and Eugene is as well publicized and Calzada clearly not doing what he was expected to be doing, and then you got TJ Finley in the mix as well, but where did that handle into the quarterback spot, and then seeing kind of the salt in the wound with Bo Nix having success, where did that rank amongst the laundry list of issues for Auburn boosters or fans versus Bryan Harsin?
Well, I mean, it's right up there, right? I mean, because it's also very visible. I mean, if you look at teams that have won a national championship and competed for one in the last, 25 years, other than maybe Stetson Bennett at UGA, show me a quarterback that's really done that and hadn't been like a near Heisman Trophy candidate, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, to get to that level, you got to have a quarterback. And Auburn did not get the kind of quarterback play this year that would make them anybody's contender at anything. And that's just reality. Calzada had the injuries. Ironically, suffered an injury against Auburn way before they knew it would be at Auburn, which kind of just one of those just twists of fate. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just is. And Finley just never really evolved into the type of player that they wanted him to be. So again, another unfortunate circumstance. And they have Robbie Ashford, who, oddly enough, played his best game against Arkansas, ran for nearly 100 yards, nearly had 300 yards passing, threw a couple touchdowns. Looked like a good player who was developing, but it was just too little too late. And it's just unfortunate circumstances where I think Bo Nix realized he could never live up to the expectations of being at Auburn as far as like the fan expectations of living up to whatever his father was, all that kind of stuff. I think that led him to leave more than his alleged beef with head coach Bryan Harsin. But unfortunately, all of it gets tacked on to Harsin as the transfers kept going, as the allegations kept coming, and as Auburn was continuing to perform well in recruiting. Oh, and then, by the way, losing the last 5 games of the season.
Nubyjas, share the story, if you don't mind, with our audience that you had with Derek Mason, who's now at Oklahoma State, former Vanderbilt head coach, and his conversation with Harsin.
Oh, gee golly. So basically, to kind of summarize this, from what I was told from several people who were familiar with the conversation, they were having a disagreement about who to hire at defensive line and defensive line coach and what they were going to do, right? And so it became a back and forth. And basically Mason allegedly said, hey, man, I've been coaching in this league a lot longer than you have. To which Bryan Harsin said, oh, you mean at Vanderbilt? Tell me more.
Damn.
That's
To the
pretty
point.
ice cold.
Yeah.
No, at Boise State.
And also Harsin is known. Man, one thing about Harsin, again, a lot of people didn't really get to know him just because of, when we first started covering him, the press conferences were on Zoom, and he's a much different person. Like most of us are different on Zoom than we are in person, particularly if you have a little bit of familiarity with you. He didn't really go out of his way to ingratiate himself to media. I had a decent relationship with him, but I'm probably one of the few on the beat who actually got some time with him away from the podium, so you really get to know him. He has a dry sense of humor, and also he doesn't take any knocks. And the reality of it was he felt Mason was trying him, and he might have been, and so he gave him a little clap back. I mean, this happens with coaches. These are conversations that happen, but also a very important thing here. When Mason left, he met with the team and told the team he was taking time off, for health issues because he had COVID and had some other things, taking time off for health issues. And 2 days later, they see him take an Oklahoma State job.
So let's say that I'm going to apply for the Auburn head coaching job, and I feel pretty confident in my credentials as a winning head coach at a different program. But what do I need to know walking in there that would make me feel confident in having enough room to make that my job and be successful before people got mad at me and the Bryan Harsin thing started all over again?
Well, I mean, Jesus, where do you start, man? I mean, if you look at, what, do you want to go back to Tommy Tuberville when he was a coach and they were trying to fly planes to go get, where do you want to go? Where they were trying to do a coaching search while the coach was getting ready to coach at the Iron Bowl, and from all people, Mr. Motorcycle Man up there in Arkansas. I mean, where do you want to start? I mean, how far in the history do you want to go to realize that, hey, Auburn's boosters will get involved? Now, listen, they're not all bad. And honestly, Auburn's no worse than anywhere else. The people care. The problem with Auburn is everything just becomes so public. And a lot of it's because they make it public, i.e., the president unprompted. Because anybody asked him, hey, are you guys investigating the program? He volunteered the information. And yeah, we're going to write about it then. And so a lot of Auburn's things have been making things public. I will say with Dr. Roberts, there weren't really a whole lot of leaks when it came to the latest search, and it appears that they're trying to circle the wagons, maybe keep things a little bit more under caps and maybe get some of that mess out of there. But we'll see if athletic director Jeff Cohen, who's from Tuscaloosa, who's very familiar with the state, who's also very familiar with the SEC, let's see, maybe he could do things different under Dr. Roberts as president. Maybe you can get some of that stuff quieted down. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, the big AD hire there. I mean, obviously that was the kickstart to going ahead and finally making the move with Harsin. I mean, you point out the close ties, the SEC knowledge and whatnot, but what have you kind of learned about John Cohen and I guess maybe sort of the expectations about how he'll attack this process once he gets his feet underneath him?
Well, from what I understand, and again, this is very relative here, that is going to be his choice. It's going to be his call, and he's going to do a thorough search. I'm sure, they use all these search firms and everything. I'm sure they'll use some of that, but it's going to be his call. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does, what his philosophy is on hiring coaches. We haven't gotten much time with him. I think he just is getting in town today. So hopefully that some of these will actually get a little bit of time to sit down with him and see what his mindset is, and we'll learn more. But from what I've been told, he doesn't mind making tough decisions. He doesn't mind criticism with the stuff that you're going to need at Auburn. Because let me tell you something, you will get criticized.
Nubyjas, I asked you about the Derek Mason back and forth with Harsin. It's a crazy story, good story too. But In the end, boosters were on and off with him, and then donors, whatever. Is it true, though, that because of what he said at SEC Media Days, that might have been the final nail in the coffin, or at least to start nailing the coffin?
For some people, yes, because they took it as arrogance. They took it as him not learning his lesson. And, some of those people also were the ones who kind of wanted to go. So now you're poking your nose at them again when you still need their money. I mean, there's no right or wrong here. It's just what happened. You know what I'm saying? And, yes, there were people who maybe were coming around on him who felt like, okay, he wants to rub our noses in this. Okay, good luck with that.
Do you think that the Auburn faithful would embrace Deion Sanders if he was the guy?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, now, will you have a couple holdouts for those reasons that we don't even need to get into? Sure. But I do think people would support it because, I mean, look at what Deion's doing right now. I mean, he's getting top 5 players there. He is winning at that school at Jackson State, historical program in SWAC. And, yeah, people are going to get excited. Now, will Deion work? I don't know. Will Auburn hire him? I don't know. I do know that there is a contingency of Auburn people, including some high-profile boosters who might surprise you a little bit, that are interested in Deion because of what they feel he could do as a kid.
How ready are they to unload when it comes to the NIL part? I mean, we know, Nubyjas, this is how it all works these days, and you can flip a roster real quick. I mean, they had, 17 quarterbacks, and, now it's basically Robbie Ashford or bust, and they can go and change that overnight, in the transfer portal era once the window's open. But, how there's a lot of money flowing around. I mean, the buyout, the new coach, and new staff and all of that, where are they? And where are they positioned as far as the NIL game goes in your mind?
Well, I guess I'm going to give away a story here I'm working on, but apparently there's somewhere between $10 to $13 million in a pot right now with the new collective, the On to Victory collective. So look for a story from me in the next couple of days about that as I get to know more information. But yeah, apparently the money is there. It's just getting it to the right places, getting people in charge of it. There's some new people in charge of this collective, so they're going to have money. But yeah, also, too, you are right. You're spending a lot of money. And keep in mind, they still got a facility that's finishing up that, unfortunately, Bryan Harsin won't ever get to use. But the facility's finishing up. And here's the other thing. They still got to pay all these buyouts, but Auburn got some money. It's just whether or not they can convince players. And they're going to need to flip the roster because guess what? You don't have your offensive linemen coming back. Most of your offensive line from this year, off a line that, you can't really say was very good, or at least has performed well up to this point, they're all leaving. So, yeah, you're going to have to go in that portal and get a starting offensive line and possibly a quarterback if you don't feel Ashford or Grenier is the guy going forward. I can't assume that Zach Calzada is coming back or TJ Finley. So, yeah, it's a lot of flipping will have to happen.
How have you felt about what you've seen from Ashford?
I mean, listen, I think he is a dynamic talent. He has the speed and capability to be a very talented football player, to be the kind of quarterback that could lead a team to win. He's also got to hold on to the ball back.
Yeah.
That's been a struggle for him. He has not held on to the ball this year. He has fumbled it, thrown it away, and that's something Auburn can't afford. So he's going to tighten that up. If he can tighten that up, hey, man, you're talking about a really talented player who has the athletic ability to be a Heisman Trophy type candidate if he hones it in.
Nubyjas, great stuff. Great story today on AL.com with what you do with Auburn. We appreciate it. We're going to save your number. You probably need to block ours. We'll be back in touch with you because this was a great segment. Thanks for your time.
Hey, gentlemen, thank y'all so much for having me.
Yeah, you too. Now, get rid of that cough. Nubyjas Wilborn, AL.com, with a hell of a story if you haven't read it. I read it earlier this afternoon, and it's what you think, from what Paul asked about donors and boosters to what Craig was asking about as far as winning or not, and then also some of the drama behind the scenes just with Bryan Harsin.
You know what?